Welcome back, everybody, coast to coast. This Week in America. Great to have you with us on the program. Christel Decker Bresko grew up in Germany during the time when Hitler came to power. Although her father was drafted in the army, their family tried to stay neutral. Together with her mother and other siblings, they tried to survive even though food, medicine, and all other necessities were scarce. When the conflict subsided, Christel chose to become a nurse, traveling to several countries in Europe, living and working in various locations. Eventually, she settled in America with her husband, Bill. They headed to an unknown land as missionaries to a northern Indian tribe above the Arctic Circle. Her life is the new subject of the new book, Living in the Land Where No Apples Grow, by Christel Decker Bresko, our guest on This Week in America. A fascinating read. Christel, thank you so much for joining us on the program. It's great to have you with us.
Oh, you're welcome.
I really love your optimism, and I talk about growing up during a very tumultuous time in the world with Hitler and all of that. Where did this optimism come from? What was the source of all that for you?
I think my mother. My mother always, she said, Christel, what you want to do, you go for it. Because somehow, she said, I never could travel, and the money was never there, but if you want to travel, you got all my blessings.
And it's interesting because that's sort of the theme, and I would assume this is it's a very inspirational book, and I'm assuming this is a message you would like everybody to take from this, especially young people, that you really need to follow your dreams. And you were a dreamer. You did follow your dreams. You taught yourself to reach English. You came to the United States. And you say, as you work at, I mentioned the missionary work, which we'll talk about, you did in Alaska. What you found, kids all over the world are the same. They all want to have that optimism that you had. They all want to be able to dream and pursue what their goals are.
I met many, many children in Alaska. The little Indian boys and girls came around, and they came to our home almost daily, after school, before school. During school, they came sometimes and needed help with some schoolwork. And so the little children in Alaska are very, very curious. I remember when we first got into the town, the little children, they came, sat down, me visit, and left. Sat down, one another came, sat down, me go, me visit, goodbye. And so I got to know them one by one, and those were the ones we taught Sunday school.
With us on the program, our special guest today on the show is Christel Decker Bresko. The book we're talking about is Living in a Land Where No Apples Grow. Her website is christeladventures.com. That's CHRISTEL adventures.com. The book is great for everybody in the family to read. It has a Dove family approval seal. It's an excellent book that talks about her life and the story. And I mentioned that growing up and talk briefly about that, and then we'll get to the missionary work and what drove you there and how you felt that you really saw miracles in action as you were there. Growing up, your dad, I mentioned, this was the time of World War II. He was missing for a long time. You really grew up not knowing where your dad was, right? Or even if he was alive.
Yes. Yes.
How difficult was that your mother was left in charge of the family. There were times when the family really had nothing and needed a miracle or two to survive. And with all of that, not knowing where your dad was, how difficult were those times?
You know, I heard my mom cry and pray during the night in our bedchamber, and she had 3 little children. One, she was 2 years old. My sister had meningitis. I had developed tuberculosis. My brother had tuberculosis in his hip joint. And so I admire my mother to this day that she kept our family together, and she never talked negative about anything. If she didn't have anything good to say, she said, I won't say anything. I'm sure they all can whistle.
It's interesting and great words of advice from your mom. And we feel we know her as we're reading about her in the book and how she guided you through these very difficult times. In 1997, just a young lady, you go off to England. You're there for a while and then get your nursing degree, and then you come to the United States. Talk about coming to the U.S., because as I'm reading, this is the time of, this is your goal, this is what you would like to do. Yet as you're arriving in Seattle, you're at a whole unknown land to you, people you've never met before. Talk about fitting in here and that adjustment you had to go through, coming to this country you've only read about, you've never visited.
Yes, I came to the United States. Somebody invited me to be a nurse on the Ship of Mercy. And he was a superintendent from a Bible school here in Kirkland, Washington. And so he came to Germany and searched for nurses, those who could speak the English language. And he realized that I'm the one he was looking for. And he invited me to come and join him in the USA. So I started my visa, and he saw to it that I became the green card. And so I immigrated because of him saying, we need you. And then the Ship of Mercy didn't come through somehow. So I was invited to come to the school, Northwest College, and to brush up with my English, since I taught myself the English language. And so I needed to know a little bit more about schooling, and then I took mission courses. And because I was asked to go to the mission field, and my mom said, Christel, Africa and India, those were my desires to go there. She said, it's too hot for you. And when I then came to the U.S. in the school, there was this one, Bill Bresko, and he was looking for somebody to come with him to Alaska. And so I was a little bit hesitant what to do. And I wanted to get married first before I traveled with him on a long distance. And so he said, Christel, I think we both are going to go to Alaska. We had plans to go to Australia, but somebody said, no, we want you in Alaska. And so we both decided, yes, this is going to be the country, and it's definitely not too hot for me.
No, and we'll talk about that, because heat was a problem, the lack of heat a problem during a lot of the time in Alaska.
Yes.
Christel Decker Bresko, our guest on the program. ChristelAdventures.com is the website. You can link on directly by going to our website, thisweekinamerica.us. The book is called Living in a Land Where No Apples Grow. And it's interesting, when you meet Bill, your husband, as you're going to school in Seattle, it's interesting how this whole missionary work came about. Talk about that. Bill was in the Korean War and made one of those little promises to God, if you get me through this, I will do something in return. And that's how this whole missionary came about. He promised that he would go do missionary work.
Yes, he told me, he said he was in Korea, and it was pitch dark. It rained and rained and rained. He had to get to the runway to turn off some lights. And he fell on his knee. He said, I was a Catholic boy. And I said, God, if you're up there and I am still alive when my time is up, I'm going to serve you and do mission work for you. It could be Alaska. This is what his desires were, to go to Alaska. And so he came back and he used the military, where the military pays for schooling. And so he went to the same school I was, and this is where we met. And so since I was willing to go with him to Alaska, so we had our plans, they were turned around because we were planning to go to Australia. And so we both decided and really prayed about it, and it seemed to be the road was wide open for us.
In reading the book, Living in a Land Where No Apples Grow, I really see coming to America through your eyes, through the eyes of an immigrant who's coming to a country A cute story there on Valentine's Day. I think it was like in 1969. This is not something you had in Germany. And, we take it for granted here, and we buy the flowers and the chocolates and the whole thing. And you're like trying to make sense of this whole thing because you're not familiar with Valentine's Day and what the whole significance is.
In Northwest College, this is where I celebrated Valentine's. We had all-school banquet, and everybody was talking about Bill and May because of, they said, oh, yeah, they're going to get married pretty soon. But they said it's a time where we can find out Valentine is coming. And somebody told me, Christel, you got your carnations, which means friendship. You get your rose, and then you get your orchid. And orchid means business. And on Valentine, he gave me an orchid corsage. And then I started thinking, I said, I think he really means it. And there was a lot of praying going on my heart because I felt I should go back to Germany. But then again, if somebody asks you, will you marry me, then it's something very serious. And so I told him, I said, yes. And he told me a little bit about his background because people told me, Christel, you don't know him, and you're just going with him to Alaska? And I said, yes, I will, because I know it's God's plan.
Well, it's interesting. You do the wedding, which we see as an exciting time, a highlight of your life, and then you're talking a mixed heart as you're doing this because your family's not there, and you don't really think about that when you're from another country. Your family's not here. You were the one that came to the United States. That was sort of a difficult time for you during that, wasn't it? Because the family wasn't there to share in this exciting time.
Very true. I remember we had a date set. All week we had finals in the school. The date set was June the 14th. And I was outside. It was a very hot day. And I had my beautiful wedding gown on, and I just cried and cried and cried. Some ladies came over and said, Christel, they're waiting for you. You better quit crying. And it's like you turned off a faucet. I quit crying and went and said, I do.
With us on the program, Christel Decker Bresko. The book we're talking about is Living in a Land Where No Apples Grow. ChristelAdventures.com is the website. That's CHRISTEL, adventures.com. Go to thisweekinamerica.us, our website. You can link on directly to that. You go off to Alaska. You talk about the soul searching as you're going there. Again, this sort of like doubt, is this really what I should be doing? Talk about when you get to Alaska and you see Fort Yukon for the first time, and this is now setting in that this is like my life now. What was that like when you got there in your first impressions of the new life as missionaries?
I tell you, it was on the way up to Alaska on the Alcan Highway where we had our first family feud. And I grabbed my suitcase and I left. And he was just wondering, how come, where is she going? There's no place. There's only one road going to Alaska. And to make matters worse, we camped out. And on the way, it was midnight from a tent. I needed to get to the bathroom. And so I couldn't find my shoes. So I used one of his shoes and one of my shoes. And I trotted off through the woods to find the bathroom. And I thought, my goodness, he has a pine cone in his shoe. And didn't think much of it. And in the morning, I heard somebody yell, Christel, you broke my teeth. I said, where in the world did you have your tooth? He said, I had my parcel in my boot. And I thought it was a pine cone. And so I really crushed his parcel.
And then eventually you had to go to get that taken care of, and that's all detailed in the book, Living in a Land Where No Apples Grow. You had to explain the story as to how that happened. Christel Decker Bresko, our guest on the show. Time is going by so quickly. it's interesting as you get there and you're trying to realize this is our mission now. This is why we're here, is to help people. And you have John Jones is the name you use in the book, who comes by and he steals a keepsake of yours.
Yes.
Talk about
Yeah,
that,
oh,
because
yes.
it's in the early days of being there, and you have to wonder, what am I doing here?
That's right. In Fort Yukon, you only have to fly out or go by boat. There's no way of walking out. And I baked my first bread in Fort Yukon. And I had my ring. My mom gave me a ring and my wedding ring on the table. And John came by and said, "Can I visit?" And he sat there, and suddenly he got up and walked out. And I looked. He took my mom's ring. But my mom's ring was only sentimental. But my wedding ring was a very expensive one. At least he left me my wedding ring. And I thought, I have to watch what I'm doing. And we had many visitors coming in. And when they needed money for their booths, they took different things. They came in and said, "Could we have some money?" I said, "We don't have any money." "Then why don't you write a check out?" See, their mentality was different than my mentality.
Yes.
And so we were suddenly plunged into something, and I said, "Yes, I will, and I'm going to go through it here by hook or by crook."
The book is Living in a Land Where No Apples Grow. Christel Decker Bresko, our guest in the program. And in the book, you'll learn about the conditions there, the plumbing or lack of plumbing, lack of electricity, sleeping in cots, the barrel stove to keep warm, temperatures 40, 50 degrees below zero, the darkness, the cold, all of that is depicted in the book, Living in a Land Where No Apples Grow. And you talk about how basically the book was named. There was a time when the snow's on the ground and it's really very attractive, but you really wanted an apple at that particular point in time. In fact, a piece of chocolate was sounding pretty good to you as well.
Oh, sometimes you have a longing for something.
Yes.
And actually, living where no apples grow, this was when I was a little girl. I wanted an apple. And this is where it all starts. And I said, "Mother, if in heaven there are no apples, I will not go there." And because of this, my first book came into existence. "Mother, if in heaven there are no apples, I don't want to go there." And here I'm in a land where no apples grow. They had a store, but in the wintertime they don't have any fresh fruit because of it would all freeze and stuff. So I settled down with some applesauce. And I was very happy that I was able, and with the candy, my mom sent me quite a few boxes of candy for Christmas one time, and I buried them in a barrel. And we had company coming, and I thought, oh, now it's the time to get some candy. And I went to that place to pick up a box, and they were all empty. Not one candy was left. And I thought my heart is going to break. My husband, instead of helping me find it, he just took off and stayed for a while until I cooled down.
Living in a Land Where No Apples Grow is the book we're talking about. Christel Decker Bresko, our guest in the program. The other book, Mother, If in Heaven There Are No Apples, I Don't Want to Go There, is also available. The books are available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Interesting stories that you'll find at the website, as well as being able to buy the books from the website, ChrystalAdventures.com. A couple minutes left in the program, and let's talk about the missionary work that you were able to do there, which you talk about at great length in the book, Living in a Land Where No Apples Grow. You really did make a difference in lives there, didn't you?
We had... It took us quite a while to settle in our home because we didn't have a door, we didn't have windows, and everything was boarded down. And so I said, before I want to have church or Sunday school, I want to get to know the people first. But then, if I said, a gentleman came in and said, "When do you start Sunday school?" And Bill just said, "Tonight." And I said, okay. And we had our first Sunday school, we had 35 children. And this is where I played my guitar. I had a small accordion, and I played the accordion, and somebody donated an organ for us, and I taught all those children those little songs. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. Order the Bible, yes, that's enough for me. And we had quite a choir, and I was always, and some of the natives, the young people, they played guitar. And so on a Sunday night, we all got together and just played our instruments, and we sang. They all talked English, but the older ones, they had their own little different language. But children were taught the English language in their schools.
Well, when you left, and you talk in the book about you knew it was time to move on. When you left, it was a much better place than when you found it. You really touched a lot of lives there. It's a fascinating story, living in a land where no apples grow. Christel Decker Bresko, our guest on the program. The website is christeladventures.com. Christel is Christel, adventures.com. You can find all the information by going to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, and linking on directly to Christel's website. Christel, it was fascinating having you on the program. Really interesting reading the book and all that you went through. And again, the message coming out of this is stay positive, stay optimistic, and it's okay to be a dreamer because dreams can come true. Thank you so much for being with us on the program.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you for asking me.
It is our pleasure. You're listening to This Week in America, website thisweekinamerica.us. Once again, our guest on the program, Christel Decker Bresko. The book we're talking about, Living in a Land Where No Apples Grow. All the information at our website, thisweekinamerica.us. And we return after these messages.